I never thought a simple curiosity could lead me to a place I didn't even know I wanted to go. It all started on a rainy Sunday afternoon when I was home alone, the kind of day that makes the world feel smaller and somehow heavier. My wife, Sarah, had gone to visit her mother, and the house was silent except for the soft patter of rain against the windows. I wandered aimlessly through the living room, my mind restless and unsettled, searching for something, though I didn't know what. That's when I noticed the wardrobe door slightly ajar. I froze for a moment, knowing instinctively whose clothes were spilling onto the floor inside. Sarah's. The thought hit me like a jolt. I wasn't supposed to touch them, let alone consider what I was thinking. But there was a pull, a magnetism I couldn't explain, a quiet curiosity that had been simmering for years in the back of my mind. My hands itched, almost against my will, as I reached for a delicate silk blouse, running my fingers over the soft fabric. My heart raced, a mixture of fear, excitement, and a strange sense of anticipation I couldn't name. I found myself standing there for what felt like an eternity, the blouse slipping from my hands into my lap. And then, almost before I realized it, I was undressing, carefully removing my own clothes and replacing them with Sarah's. The texture of the fabrics, the way the clothes conformed to my body, felt alien and oddly right at the same time. I picked up a skirt, the way it flowed between my fingers making my chest tighten. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror and froze. This was me, or at least a version of me I had never allowed myself to see. The reflection was someone I barely recognized, someone soft and vulnerable yet undeniably alive. Time seemed to stretch, my thoughts scattered and overlapping as I experimented adjusting a strap here, smoothing a skirt there, even trying on her scarf. The mirror didn't judge, didn't scold, and for the first time, I felt a sense of freedom, a small, dizzying liberation. I laughed nervously, a sound that felt strange even to my own ears. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. But just as I was beginning to feel some fragile sense of peace, the front door clicked. Panic surged through me. I hadn't thought about the possibility of being caught. I hadn't planned for it. I froze, heart hammering, every muscle tense. And then I heard her voice, soft, calm, impossibly understanding. "Hey," she said, stepping into the room. My stomach dropped. I turned slowly, expecting anger, disbelief, maybe even humiliation. But what I saw stopped me in my tracks. Sarah was standing there, her eyes warm, a gentle smile playing on her lips. No shock. No scolding. Just a quiet, steady acceptance that felt almost unreal. I wanted to explain, to apologize, to vanish into the floor, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, she walked toward me, her movements slow and deliberate, and before I could protest, she wrapped me in a hug. The scent of her perfume, the softness of her hair brushing my cheek, anchored me in a way nothing else had. I felt tears prick the corners of my eyes, an overwhelming mixture of shame, relief, and an unexpected, profound comfort. "It's okay," she whispered, her voice steady, reassuring. "I'm not upset. I just want you to know that I see you." Her words were strange and transformative. They weren't about permission, not exactly, but about understanding, acknowledgement, and acceptance. I had always carried this secret in silence, convinced it was something to be ashamed of, something I needed to hide even from myself. And yet, here she was, dissolving years of fear with a single embrace. The weight on my chest eased slightly, though the nervous flutter of my heart remained. I had been caught, yes, but instead of rejection, there was connection. Instead of ridicule, there was love. We stood like that for a long time, neither speaking, just letting the moment settle around us. I could feel her hand resting lightly on my back, reassuring, grounding, almost as if she were telling me that whatever this was, whatever I was feeling, it didn't diminish me in her eyes. Slowly, I pulled back, not because I wanted to end the hug but because I needed to look at her, to read her expression, to make sure this was real. And it was. Her smile didn't falter, and her eyes held a depth I had never truly seen before. "I've always known," she said finally, a small, knowing smile curling her lips. My stomach knotted, confusion mingling with curiosity. "About this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded. "I always sensed it. The little ways you would linger by my wardrobe, the way you admired things quietly, the little hesitations before you tried something out. I didn't want to push, I wanted you to come to it yourself. Hearing her words was like a door opening in my mind. I had spent so many years thinking I needed to hide this part of myself, that it was some strange, unspeakable thing, but here she was, holding it gently in her hands, making it safe to exist. I wanted to speak, to ask a million questions, to understand, but my voice was caught in a web of emotions I couldn't untangle. She laughed softly, reading my bewilderment. "You don't have to say anything," she said. I want you to know that you're not alone. And you never have to hide from me." There was a bravery in her acceptance that I hadn't known I needed. It wasn't about condoning or encouraging, it was about witnessing, about acknowledging me without judgment. And in that moment, I felt a courage bloom in my chest, fragile but undeniable. I could exist in this truth without fear, at least not completely, because I had someone standing beside me who saw me, not the mask, not the exterior, but me. Over the next few hours, we talked quietly, softly, exploring the edges of my experience, my curiosity, my desires. I told her things I had never spoken aloud to anyone, fears and fascinations, the secret fantasies that had lived quietly in my mind for years. She listened, sometimes nodding, sometimes asking gentle questions, never pushing, never mocking, always present. And in the act of speaking, of sharing, I felt layers of shame peeling away, leaving something raw but authentic, something I could call my own without apology. Eventually, the conversation faded into a comfortable silence. We didn't need to fill every moment with words. We simply existed in the shared space, the room now filled with a quiet understanding and the soft echo of rain. I caught my reflection in the mirror again, this time fully aware and unafraid. I was the same person, and yet entirely new. The clothes, once a symbol of curiosity and fear, now felt like an extension of something I had long denied in myself, a quiet exploration of identity, a small, personal truth that no one could take away. Sarah reached out, taking my hand, and I realized that this moment, as simple as it seemed, had changed the foundation of our relationship. Trust, acceptance, and love were no longer abstract concepts. They were tangible, breathing, and deeply human. She didn't ask me to stop or to continue, she simply held space for me, and that alone was transformative. I didn't feel exposed or vulnerable anymore. I felt seen, acknowledged, and strangely liberated. The fear that had gripped me at the moment of being caught dissolved into something entirely unexpected, peace. Later, as evening settled over the house, we sat together in the living room, side by side, sharing the quiet comfort of presence. She teased me gently about the scarf I had wrapped clumsily around my neck, and I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. The secret that had once felt like a cage had become, in her acceptance, a bridge connecting our hearts and understanding in ways I had never imagined possible. It wasn't about clothing or appearances, it was about trust, courage, and the power of simply being seen for who you truly are. That night, as I lay in bed, the soft hum of rain outside my window, I realized something fundamental. Transformation doesn't always come in grand, dramatic gestures. Sometimes, it comes in a quiet embrace, in the smile of someone who refuses to judge, in the courage to reveal a truth you have hidden even from yourself. I had been caught in her clothes, yes, but in that moment, I had been found in myself, and in the warmth of her acceptance, I knew I had arrived somewhere I had never dared to hope, a place of love, understanding, and unspoken courage. I drifted into sleep with a strange serenity, knowing that tomorrow would come with its own questions, its own challenges, but also with the quiet certainty that I no longer had to face them alone. I had been caught, and yet, paradoxically, I had been set free. And as dreams carried me away, I knew that this was only the beginning of a journey, one that would stretch into uncharted territory, with Sarah by my side, witnessing, supporting, and quietly celebrating the truth of who I was, and who I was becoming. The days that followed felt like stepping into a completely new world. Every morning, I woke with a sense of anticipation mixed with lingering nervousness, wondering how much of this secret part of me I could explore without fear. Sarah's acceptance had opened a door I had never dared to approach before, but opening it fully was terrifying. I found myself staring at her wardrobe again, the neatly folded skirts, delicate blouses, and flowing scarves calling to me with an almost magnetic insistence. And yet, this time, I didn't sneak or hide. I asked, "Can I try this one?" I asked, holding up a soft pink blouse that I had admired from afar for months. My voice trembled slightly. Sarah looked at me, her expression calm, patient, and tender. She gave a small nod. "Of course," she said. "Take your time." Her words, simple as they were, carried a weight I hadn't anticipated. I hesitated only for a moment before letting the blouse slip over my arms, feeling it drape softly across my shoulders. The fabric was familiar now, comforting, almost like a second skin. I paired it with one of her skirts, the way it swirled around my legs feeling surreal yet natural. For the first time, I allowed myself to look fully in the mirror without flinching. I barely recognized the person staring back at me, not because it was someone different, but because it was me, revealed. The reflection was delicate and tentative, yet undeniably alive. I touched my face, my hair, the curve of my jawline, the softness of my hands in the fabric, and felt a strange, exhilarating freedom. It wasn't about pretending, it was about acknowledging a part of myself I had kept hidden, even from myself. Sarah watched quietly from the doorway, a gentle smile never leaving her face. "You look happy," she said softly. Her words felt like an anchor, steadying me as emotions surged. Relief, excitement, fear, curiosity, all of them tangled together in a knot I didn't have the strength or desire to untangle. I laughed nervously, the sound shaking in the empty room. I don't know what I'm doing," I admitted. "I've never." "I know," she said, cutting me off gently. "You've never allowed yourself. That's why I want to be here. I don't want you to be afraid of being seen. Not by me, not by yourself." Her words felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. I had spent years hiding, pretending, stuffing this part of me deep inside where no one could see. And now, in the quiet intimacy of our living room, that shadow felt lighter, less frightening. I moved closer to the mirror, adjusting the blouse, letting the skirt settle naturally, and finally, for the first time, smiled fully at my reflection. Over the next few weeks, what began as cautious exploration turned into a kind of ritual. Every time Sarah left for work or an errand, I would take a moment to experiment, to explore the textures, colors, and shapes that had always fascinated me. I learned the gentle art of folding fabric, of choosing the right blouse for the right skirt, of adjusting scarves to fall naturally. And with each passing day, I noticed subtle changes not just in how I looked, but in how I moved, how I held myself, how I felt inside. There was a transformation in courage as well. I began to talk to Sarah more openly about my thoughts and feelings. I shared the small thrills, the doubts, and even the moments of panic when I questioned if this was right. She listened without judgment, offering gentle guidance or simply a quiet presence when words weren't enough. And each time I shared, each time I allowed a fragment of myself to be seen, I felt lighter, freer, more whole. One evening, after an especially long day at work, Sarah returned home to find me sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, carefully applying a soft layer of makeup. I froze when she walked in, my hands mid-motion, heart racing in a familiar pattern of fear and excitement. But she didn't gasp, didn't scold, didn't retreat. She simply smiled. "Wow," she said softly, her eyes bright with gentle awe. "You're really embracing it, aren't you?" I nodded, cheeks flushed, unsure how to respond. I think I want to understand this side of me," I admitted. "I don't want to hide it anymore." Her response was exactly what I needed. She knelt beside me and wrapped her arms around my shoulders, holding me close. "Then we'll do it together," she said. "Every step, every choice, every discovery. You're not alone in this. And I don't want you to be afraid of being yourself, ever again." Her embrace dissolved all lingering shame. Tears came unbidden, but they were not tears of guilt or fear, they were tears of release, of acceptance, of knowing that this secret part of me could finally breathe. In the weeks that followed, I found a new rhythm. The boundaries between fear and freedom blurred. I began wearing her clothes more often, not in hiding, but in quiet moments of personal exploration. The mirror became a friend, a witness to the unfolding of someone I had always known existed deep inside. I learned to move gracefully in skirts, to experiment with scarves and accessories, to allow myself the simple pleasure of soft fabrics against my skin. The most surprising transformation, though, wasn't in the clothes or in my reflection, it was in the way I interacted with Sarah, and with the world. I carried myself with a subtle confidence, a quiet assurance born of authenticity. I spoke more freely, laughed more easily, and no longer felt the heavy, suffocating weight of secrecy pressing down on me. One night, as the rain tapped gently against the windows once again, I sat beside Sarah, wrapped in one of her oversized sweaters, my hair loosely pinned back. She sipped her tea, eyes twinkling, and I felt a boldness I had never known. "Do you think we could ever go out like this?" I asked, my voice tentative. She smiled knowingly. "If you want to," she said simply. "I'll be with you. No judgment, no fear. Just us." Her words ignited a mix of excitement and nerves, but the fear that had once paralyzed me was no longer the same. With Sarah by my side, holding space for me to exist fully, the world didn't feel so threatening anymore. I realized that transformation wasn't just about clothes, makeup, or appearances, it was about trust, courage, and the willingness to reveal one's deepest self without fear. As I looked into her eyes that night, I knew I had arrived somewhere I had only dreamed of. I had been caught in her clothes once, trembling with anxiety and shame, but now I was living openly, fully, authentically. And the greatest revelation was this: the courage to be seen, to be accepted, and to embrace a hidden part of myself had changed everything. It had transformed not just my reflection, but my entire sense of who I was and who I could become. Over the following days, life settled into a delicate rhythm, yet every moment carried an undercurrent of tension and excitement. I had started to take small steps beyond the safety of our home, trying on her clothes when she was around, learning how to move, how to hold myself, how to feel natural. It was liberating, but it was also terrifying. Every creak of the floorboards, every sudden knock at the door made my heart leap. One afternoon, Sarah suggested we do something daring but gentle. She wanted to help me feel comfortable stepping into public spaces, even if only for a brief moment. I was nervous, almost shaking, but I nodded. We chose a small, quiet cafe down the street, one we frequented together but rarely visited during busy hours. I picked a soft pastel dress from her wardrobe, a simple flowy skirt, and a blouse that felt familiar now. She braided my hair lightly, tied it back with a ribbon, and smiled reassuringly. "You look amazing," she said. "Remember, I'm with you. That's all that matters." Walking to the cafe, I felt exposed in a way I had never imagined. Passers-by didn't notice, or at least they didn't react. Yet inside, my mind raced. What if someone recognized me? What if they laughed? What if they whispered? Every step was a test of courage. And yet, each glance at Sarah, walking beside me with quiet confidence and warmth, reminded me that I wasn't alone. At the cafe, we found a small table near the window. I sipped my coffee cautiously, glancing at my reflection in the glass, marveling at the transformation I had allowed myself to explore. Sarah reached over and held my hand across the table, her touch grounding me. "See," she said softly. "It's okay. You're okay." In that moment, a surge of gratitude and relief flooded me. The fear I had carried for so long, the fear of judgment, exposure, even self-rejection, began to dissolve. I realized that the transformation wasn't just external. It was happening inside me, reshaping my confidence, my identity, my understanding of myself. We returned home, and I lingered before the mirror again, studying the reflection that had become so familiar yet still surprising. I experimented with new combinations, layering scarves, and experimenting with subtle makeup. Every adjustment was an exploration, a statement of existence. And every time Sarah entered the room, she offered smiles, gentle encouragement, or playful teasing, never ridicule, never judgment. One evening, as twilight settled over the city, the power flickered briefly and the room dimmed. I froze, mid-motion, adjusting a delicate blouse. My heart pounded, and for a split second, the old panic returned. What if someone saw me like this? But then Sarah came quietly behind me, wrapping her arms around my shoulders and resting her chin lightly on my hair. "It's okay," she whispered. "You're safe. You're seen. You're loved." Her words, simple and unyielding, shattered the remnants of fear. I felt tears spring to my eyes, the weight I had carried for years finally lifting. I turned to her, meeting her gaze, and in that quiet, electric moment, I realized that transformation isn't just about appearances, it's about trust, courage, vulnerability, and love. As the weeks passed, I grew bolder. I learned to move with ease in skirts, to arrange my hair naturally, to let the softness of fabrics complement rather than conceal me. I started keeping small, personal rituals, lighting candles while trying on outfits, writing reflections in a journal, quietly exploring who I was becoming. And each time, Sarah was there not as a judge, not as a teacher, but as a witness and companion, allowing me to step into myself fully and without fear. Then came the day I nearly panicked. I had been trying on a particularly delicate dress, adjusting the fit carefully, when the doorbell rang unexpectedly. My heart froze. We weren't expecting anyone. The sound of Sarah's keys turning in the lock sent adrenaline surging through me. For a moment, I considered hiding or scrambling to change, but before I could act, the door swung open and it wasn't a stranger. It was Sarah's sister, standing there with a bright smile. I froze, caught mid-motion, caught in her clothes, utterly exposed. The panic that gripped me was intense, my stomach twisting. I expected laughter, teasing, perhaps anger, but instead, something remarkable happened. Sarah's sister looked at me, took in the scene, and then smiled warmly. She didn't flinch, didn't judge, didn't recoil. Instead, she said simply, "You look happy." Sarah, standing behind me, gave a soft laugh and a reassuring nudge. "See? It's okay," she whispered. "They understand. You're safe." In that moment, I realized how far I had come. What had once been terrifying, being seen, being vulnerable, was no longer a source of shame. I had grown into a person who could exist authentically, who could explore identity and expression without fear. And the love and acceptance around me, especially Sarah's, had transformed that journey from a secret and lonely struggle into something vibrant, human, and profoundly liberating. From that day on, I began to experiment even more openly, though always with care and mindfulness. I discovered the joy of mixing textures and colors, of layering scarves, of exploring subtle makeup and accessories. Each choice became an expression not just of curiosity, but of self-recognition, courage, and creativity. And each time I caught my reflection, I felt a quiet pride in the person I was becoming, pride in the truth I had dared to reveal. The most profound realization was this: transformation isn't about the clothes, the scarves, or the makeup. It's about the willingness to face oneself honestly, to reveal hidden truths, to allow others to witness and accept those truths without judgment. It's about courage, vulnerability, and trust. And most importantly, it's about love, the kind that sees you fully, embraces you, and allows you to exist without fear. One rainy evening, much like the first, I stood in front of the mirror wearing a soft lavender dress, my hair loosely pinned back, a scarf draped elegantly around my neck. Sarah came up behind me, slipping her hands around my waist, resting her chin lightly on my shoulder. "You've come so far," she said softly. "I see you. I see all of you." I turned in her arms, tears brimming, and finally smiled fully at the person staring back at me, a reflection of curiosity, courage, vulnerability, and authenticity. "I see me too," I whispered. And in that quiet, profound embrace, I realized the truth I had been seeking for so long. Being caught in her clothes wasn't a moment of shame or fear, it was the beginning of transformation, of discovery, of acceptance. It was the moment I was truly seen. And as she held me, smiling, reassuring, and loving, I knew I was finally home in my own skin, in my own truth, and in the heart of someone who loved me completely for who I was. Over the following weeks, life became a delicate dance between exploration and comfort. I began to see my own reflection not as a source of anxiety but as a guide, showing me who I could be when I embraced authenticity fully. Each morning, I would carefully select an outfit from Sarah's wardrobe, experimenting with textures, colors, and combinations. The silk blouses, flowing skirts, and soft scarves became instruments of self-expression, a quiet yet powerful assertion of identity. Sarah never pushed me. She never demanded explanations. She simply existed beside me, a steady presence, a witness to my transformation. Sometimes she would tease lightly, a playful comment about a scarf or a braid, and I would laugh, light, unburdened, and genuine. Other times, she would hold me close, whispering reassurance, grounding me when the old fear threatened to resurface. The walls I had built around my secret were crumbling, replaced by trust and the safety of love. One afternoon, Sarah suggested we take a walk through the neighborhood. My heart leapt at the idea, both terrified and exhilarated. I had never imagined leaving the house dressed like this, vulnerable to the gaze of the world. I selected a soft, flowing skirt and a blouse in a gentle shade of pink, my hair loosely braided with a ribbon. Sarah smiled at me as I adjusted the outfit, her eyes conveying encouragement and quiet pride. "We'll go slowly," she said. "Step by step. Just be yourself." As we stepped outside, the air crisp and filled with the scent of rain-washed streets, I felt a strange mix of exposure and liberation. Passers-by seemed unaware or unconcerned, and the quiet courage that had been building inside me blossomed into something tangible. Each step was a declaration, a permission to exist fully and authentically. I walked taller, my movements softer yet confident, feeling the subtle power of self-acceptance with every stride. Returning home, I caught my reflection in the mirror and paused, studying the person I saw. The fear and hesitation of weeks ago had given way to quiet certainty. The clothing, once a secret and a source of shame, had become a vehicle for understanding, for identity, for courage. And Sarah, standing beside me with that same gentle smile, had been the anchor, the witness, and the guide. Then came an unexpected twist that would test the fragility and strength of our journey. One evening, as I was experimenting with a particularly delicate dress, a knock at the door startled me. My heart leapt into my throat. We weren't expecting anyone. Fear surged. What if a neighbor, a friend, someone from work, had seen me like this? I froze mid-motion, torn between panic and the desire to hide. Sarah, calm and steady, moved beside me, resting her hand lightly on my shoulder. "It's okay," she said. "We'll handle this together." I hesitated, then slowly opened the door. To my surprise, it was her friend, someone I had met only a few times. She looked at me, took in the scene, and for a brief moment, I expected confusion or judgment. But instead, she smiled warmly, nodding as if acknowledging something unspoken. "You look happy," she said simply. Sarah laughed softly, relief and amusement in her voice. "See? Nothing to worry about," she said, squeezing my hand. That night, after the visitor had left, I sat before the mirror, reflecting on everything that had transpired. The fear of judgment, the anxiety of exposure, the trembling hesitation. I realized that all of it had been transformed by acceptance, love, and the courage to reveal the hidden self. I allowed myself a quiet smile, tracing the delicate curves of the fabric, the soft braid of my hair, the gentle glow of self-realization. In those quiet hours, I understood something fundamental. The transformation was never just about clothes or appearance. It was about embracing vulnerability, facing fear, and allowing oneself to be seen fully. It was about trust, courage, and the quiet, unwavering support of someone who loves you unconditionally. And it was about discovering that authenticity, once nurtured, carries a power stronger than shame or secrecy ever could. As the days turned into weeks, I began to integrate this part of myself into life with Sarah fully. We shared quiet rituals, selecting outfits, styling hair, practicing movements in front of the mirror, laughing over small mistakes, celebrating discoveries. Each interaction reinforced trust, deepened connection, and nurtured self-respect. The clothing, once a symbol of curiosity and fear, had become a celebration of identity, a tool for understanding and expressing the self with courage and grace. One rainy evening, much like the first when it all began, I stood in front of the mirror wearing a soft lavender dress, my hair loosely pinned back, a scarf draped elegantly around my neck. Sarah came up behind me, slipping her arms around my waist and resting her chin lightly on my shoulder. "You've come so far," she said softly. "I see you. I see all of you." I turned in her embrace, tears brimming, and for the first time, smiled fully at the person staring back at me, a reflection of courage, vulnerability, authenticity, and joy. "I see me too," I whispered. And in that quiet, profound moment, I understood the truth I had been seeking all along. Being caught in her clothes had been the beginning, a spark of fear and curiosity. But it was her love, her acceptance, and the courage to reveal myself that had transformed everything. I had discovered freedom, identity, and self-respect. I had learned that being truly seen is one of the most powerful forms of transformation. As I rested in her arms, the rain tapping softly against the windows, I realized that this was not an ending but a beginning, a journey into authenticity, trust, and love, one that I would walk every day, with Sarah by my side, witnessing, supporting, and celebrating the truth of who I was and who I was becoming. In that embrace, I was home, fully and irrevocably, in my own skin, in my own truth, and in the heart of someone who saw me completely and loved me without condition. And that was more than I had ever dared to hope for.